The rain fell heavily against the windows of the grand mansion, the sound echoing through the empty halls. Jungkook stood in front of the large window in his house, his sharp eyes watching the storm outside. He was not one to be intimidated by the storms. After all, he was the storm in his world, feared by everyone who knew his name. Yet today, a different kind of storm brewed inside him, a storm of emotions he had long buried beneath his cold, calculating exterior. There was a knock on the door, and without turning around, Jungkook called out, "Enter." One of the most trusted men, Yoongi, stepped into the room, his expression unbearable. It's time, boss. The girl and her father are waiting in the main hall. Jungkook remained silent for a moment, his thoughts a whirlwind. This marriage was not out of love, nor was it a choice. It was a transaction and necessary evil to secure the funds he needed to expand his empire. The girl's father, a wealthy businessman on the verge of bankruptcy, had no choice but to agree to Jungkook's terms, hand over his daughter Jenny, and in return his failing businesses would be saved. "Let's get this over with," Jungkook finally said, his voice devoid of emotion. He straightened his suit jacket, smoothing out the invisible wrinkles, and turned to face Yoongi. "I don't want any trouble." Yoongi nodded, understanding the weight of those words. Trouble was something Jungkook didn't tolerate, especially when it came to matters that could potentially expose his vulnerabilities. The less his enemies knew about him, the better. As Jungkook made his way to the main hall, he could not help but think about Jenny, the girl he was about to marry. He had seen her only once, a brief encounter when he had visited her father to finalize the deal. She was quiet, her eyes full of fear and uncertainty, much like a lamb being led to the slaughter. But Jungkook didn't care. His hand had no room for compassion, and this marriage was just another means to end. The doors to the main hall opened, revealing a grand space filled with ornate decorations and a long alley leading to a small altar. At the end of the alley stood Jenny, dressed in a simple white gown. Her eyes were downcast, her hands trembling as she clutched the bouquet of white roses. Jungkook gazed hardened as he walked towards her, his footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Her father stood beside her, his face pale, his eyes filled with regret. But there was nothing he could do now. He had made his bed, and now his daughter would have to lie in it. The ceremony was quick and devoid of emotions. There was no guest, no celebrations, just the cold exchange of vows. Jungkook's voice was steady as he recited the words, but there was no warmth in them. Jenny, on the other hand, could barely keep her voice from shaking as she repeated her vows, her eyes never meeting his. When the officially finally declared them husband and wife, Jungkook didn't waste any time. He turned to Jenny, his wife now, and spoke in a low, commanding tone. "You belong to me now. You will do as I say, and at return your father will be free from his debts. Understand?" Jenny nodded, her lips trembling. Jungkook could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but he ignored them. He had no time for tears or emotions. He had a mission to accomplish, and she was merely a tool to help him achieve it. "Good," he said, his voice cold. "Let's go." Without waiting for a response, Jungkook took her hand and led her out of the hall. The drive to his mansion was silent. The atmosphere in the car tense and comfortable. Jenny sat beside him, her hands clenched in her lap, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. When they arrived at the mansion, Jungkook wasted no time in showing her to her new room. It was luxurious, far more than she was used to. But there was no warmth in it, just like the man she had married. "This is where you will stay," Jungkook said, his tone matter of fact. "You are free to roam the house, but don't touch anything you are not supposed to. And stay away of my way. I don't have time to babysit." Jenny nodded silently, her face pale. Jungkook watched her for a moment, his sketch unreadable. There was something about her that tugged at a long buried part of him, but he quickly pushed it aside. He could not afford to be weak. As he turned to leave, Jenny's voice stopped him. "Why are you doing this?" Jungkook paused, his hand on the door handle. He didn't turn around as he answered, his voice cold and distant. "Because I have to. This is the world I live in, and you are a part of it now. Get used to it." With that, he left the room, closing the door behind him. He leaned against the wall outside, his eyes closing as he took a deep breath. He had done with what needed to be done. But deep down, something in him stirred, something he was not ready to confront. Jenny was just a means to end, a pawn in his game. But as he stood there, he could not shake the feeling that she was going to be much more than that. Little that little did Jungkook know this marriage was about to change his life in ways he never expected, revealing the heart he thought he had buried long ago.